Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Building an Enterprise Level System with Xero series. And today we are talking unlock features for scaling businesses in Xero. Really excited for the discussion today. We've got an absolutely fantastic panel for you. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds for everyone to filter through. Just a couple of housekeeping points. So you'll see the Q&A option within the Zoom controls. Please do use that to fire through any and all questions that you've got for our fantastic panel. We're going to do brief intros. We're then going to get into our discussion of unlocking features for scaling businesses in Xero. I'll preview what's coming up over the remainder of the series. That will take us to the full half hour, and then there will be bonus Q&A content at the very end. So, by way of intro, my name's David Tuck. I am the co-founder and CEO here at Mayday. Our mission is to mend month end, starting with the needs of multi-entity businesses, intercompany recharges, cross-entity bank reconciliation, keeping intercompany loans in balance. I started my career as an accountant at Deloitte before heading up a succession of startup and SME finance teams. I was twice the finance leader of Xero using multi-entity groups. And with this series, trying to create the resource that I wish I'd had as a Xero using finance leader about how best to move into our growth phase with Xero as our accounting system. I've been an accounting tech entrepreneur for the last decade. I was previously the founder at Chaser, the accounts receivable solution, and for the last couple of years have been building Mayday with my co-founder Griff and our amazing team. At Mayday, we're for larger Xero users, so the majority of our customers have in-house finance teams, and we found they kept coming back to two questions. Is Xero still the right system for me? And if yes, how long will that be the case? Indefinitely, or at what point will I outgrow it? The nature of uncertainty is such that when we don't know something, it leads us to act earlier. The ERP move is horrible and hectic, as one of our customers described it. It's incredibly expensive in terms of consulting fees, and 58% of ERP implementations fail. We've got this idea of peace of mind, as we call it, the peace of mind that I can happily move into my growth phase with Xero as my accounting system without needing to make that move to ERP. This series is very much against the backdrop of how can we be useful to our target customer. It's not product marketing. It's not about how to build a best-in-class app stack. There's a reason I'm not wearing a Mayday t-shirt for any of these webinars. And it's about righting a misconception that it's not possible to move into the growth phase with Xero and build an enterprise level system around it. But equally, it's not about overcorrecting. It's not about replacing one myth with another, that Xero is this kind of all singing, all dancing, system that any and all businesses can use for the remainder of time. So there will be instances where it's the right thing for a business to move to an ERP system, and we want to touch on those as well. So that's quite enough from me. I'm so thrilled to have the phenomenal panel that we have with us today. So I'm going to hand over them to give their intros. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Over to you first.
Okay, yeah, I'm Steve Jarvis. I've been a CFO for about 11 years now. And prior to that, I was in the city as a fund manager at hedge funds and asset managers. So I've been on this scale-up journey a number of times with a number of different companies, mainly in the sustainability space. And the one sort of facet is I've always used Xero. Where we weren't on Xero, I've moved to Xero incredibly quickly because it's such a good system. I've worked for consulting companies, stock exchanges, a tequila manufacturer, and the current incarnation is Manufacture 2030. What we do is we help really large companies decarbonize their supply chain. We're a climate tech business, so we're a software as a service business. And we just raised Series A funding, and we're scaling up, and we're doing that on Xero, and we've just started that process.
Amazing. Steve, thank you so much for being with us. Heidi, over to you.
Hi, I'm Heidi Seal. I'm calling in from New Zealand today. So I've been involved in the Xero in the ecosystem for around 12-ish years. I did own a bookkeeping and accounting and add-on software implementation business for a number of years. And now I work as an operations consultant. So my business Sense, we consult with companies to get them working to streamline their operations, both from a place of people, process, and the tech. So it's not just about the tech, but it's making sure that the people and the process all fit together so that things can have straight line workflows and really along every point of the customer journey, both from the customer perspective, but also from the internal business perspective. Everything can work beautifully. We can have clear visibility over the business and its metrics, and just have an operation that works well. So yeah, delighted to be here today. This is one of my favorite things to riff on. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, so thrilled to have you join us. And finally, love to introduce Alastair, who works at a company some of the attendees of this series may have heard of. Alastair, over to you.
Thanks, David. And nice to meet you all. I'm Alastair. I work at Xero. So I'm a partner consulting manager. I work with a team of 8 customer success specialists. We're all like trained accountants, and we work predominantly in the accounting and bookkeeping channel. So anything from sole practitioners all the way up to kind of large enterprise style partners. We go in and really consult and make sure we understand what our partners' needs are and how to get the best use out of Xero. So before Xero, I was actually a management accountant myself. I worked at a tech company in London. I was a multi-entity tech company on Xero, and we went through that whole kind of question in our kind of mind about, do we move on to the ERP system, which we ended up doing, but it wasn't without its teething issues. And so hopefully today we can kind of share some of those areas of Xero in which we can really make sure that you can help scale your business using Xero and get the best use out of it before you may want to move on to an ERP system in the future.
Amazing. And Alastair, so thrilled to have you with us, because yeah, you bring both the am I right? All of the partner consulting team are qualified accountants.
Yeah,
works as accountant. Yeah. Amazing. So you've got that, and you've got the perspective of having worked in industry and gone multi-entity as well. So absolutely thrilled to have you with us. So I'm going to boomerang back to you to kind of frame the discussion. When we talk about unlocking features for scaling businesses in Xero, you know, from a sort of jobs to be done perspective, what are we talking about here?
I guess if I was to kind of think about that from like customizing the use out of Xero in its core product, so I guess in its broadest sense, like what we want to understand and see is really like, how do we get the best use out of Xero right now for our business, as well as how do we set up Xero and customize it for the future, which will allow us to scale as a business. So I guess like for me, it's not just about like how you as an in-house finance team can do that, but it's also how you can work with your accountant in practice, be able to unlock some of those features. And probably something I wasn't aware of when I was working in industry is just actually the amount of expertise that sit within accounting and bookkeeping channel with various Xero affiliated practices. And it's definitely something I would probably always point to as an end user, to really kind of speak with your accounting and bookkeeping partner to understand what they can do to help you unlock some of those features. I guess if I could put in my Xero hat on and thinking about Xero in its like the actual product itself, you can separate the customization really through some standard features, such as like customizing invoices to tailor for your own business. Maybe it's even repeating sales invoices. Like if you're a tech company, that's a perfect way of kind of allowing you to really save a lot of time, having that repeating sales invoice for various customers, groups of customers, contacts, setting up credit limits. So there's a huge amount of customization that can be done within Xero's core product. We could then also start to look at advanced features. So like the Xero to Xero network key. We've got other features such as like the fixed asset register, and like the list goes on, but I won't kind of go into it right now. But for me, like it's just really stepping into the actual Xero product and really kind of getting to grips with like all the things you can do to really help scale your business using the Xero core product. Amazing.
And to move from that into, you know, if we position this system, it's building your enterprise level system around Xero as the core kind of general ledger at the heart of that. What are the growing pains that more sort of sophisticated Xero using businesses, you know, run into with Xero as the heart of that system. Steve, I'd love to come into you first in terms of what those growing pains are.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of want multi-dimensional stuff. So tracking categories is really important, and trying to work that through. We also need to think about approvals, multi-layer approvals, things like card spend, how we managing that, have we got a decent bank feed? There's a whole sort of plethora of things, and they all need to come into Xero to be managed properly. And then if I want to really build up a sort of replica of an ERP, I'll probably want some good dashboarding and good reporting as well. And that's always been sort of the bedrock of when I've built a system. So let's understand what our sort of core problems are, and then work out what Xero can do on its own. And generally, for the early stages, Xero can do a good job. And then as you build it out later on, Xero sort of reaches its end, and you need to start reaching out to the app ecosystem and to other partners. So that's the journey that I've found.
Amazing. And that comes through really clearly. So I guess we talk multi-dimensionality, when it comes to sort of posting our data, so that we'll have that ability for reporting at the back end, the then approvals of that data when it comes to things like payments and invoices going out. And then at the final stage, you talk about the dashboarding and understanding the data as the three distinct stages there, Steve.
Yeah, that's right. And if I sort of take a step back and think, well, why did we choose Xero as the sort of core engine that we're building this on? There's a couple of reasons. I went into it thinking in the current place, I might use Xero, I might not. But what I wanted to make sure was that there was a really big ecosystem, both of partners, so people like Heidi, lots of specialists that actually really know what they're doing, because when you're building an enterprise level system, I'm not going to know what all of my problems are and what all of the solutions are. So I need a good bunch of people around me, and then also need a decent bunch of apps. Really, that comes down to either the sort of Xero in the QuickBooks or the enterprise level stuff. The stuff in the middle is good. It's really, really good. We did look at it, but it didn't really suit us, because we thought it might solve the problem now, but what if we face something that our business changes and we can't scale it? We're really left with their support rather than people like Heidi or people like yourself, David, to solve those problems. So in the end, I decided that an ERP system would be far too heavy to actually implement. Not necessarily in terms of cost, but in terms of my and my team's time. We'd have gone into a little rabbit hole for the next 6 to 9 months. When we're a scale-up business, the business do not need us to be in this little rabbit hole. They need us out there solving their problems for us. So that's the backdrop of why we chose Xero.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Heidi, I'd love to come to you now. I mean, you have such a kind of wealth of experience and breadth of businesses that you've worked with. Back to those sort of growing pains, what are the things you see people sort of repeatedly kind of trip up on when it comes to scaling with Xero?
Yeah, so I think kind of similar message potentially from a different angle. So I think a lot of people, they start with Xero and are using it, and it's working well, and as they need more, whether that be functionality or insights to their data, they can dig a bit deeper and find that within Xero. So some of the custom reporting, the ability to have multiple budgets, tracking categories, some of the other customization things, sometimes it's just scratching that little bit further, and that can unlock enough to see them through the next little phase. And then often it does come to the point where some of the functionality that they just start to need to build to have a robust business that can scale is outside of Xero, and that's where we start knocking on the doors of some of those add-ons. And the add-on marketplace is massive. It's you kind of just can't lucky dip something. So there's that bit of research and criteria testing and best fit testing that can really come into play, and that can often just be a couple of add-ons placed beautifully around that around that central Xero hub can just unlock so much in terms of capabilities that they're needing to grow through to that next level of what's required in the business.
Amazing. And then to briefly touch now on, so I covered at the beginning, there will be times where, it's right for a business to kind of make the horrible and hectic move to ERP. Anything that we've covered so far, anything that you've seen, which is like, okay, that's a real clear indicator that business's time has come.
Yeah, I mean, when they start bumping up against some of those transaction limits in terms of what Xero can handle from a volume perspective, then most definitely there's a few big decisions that need to be thought through at that point. So that's one thing that's a definite thing that it kind of signals a little bit of a crossroads. And then I think the other thing is working through most of those roadblocks to see to completion. Can they be solved with a Xero add-on? And a lot of the time it can be, but then there are certain instances where it just becomes a bit impractical in terms of certain processes that just aren't going to work as well as they could. So again, it's a bit of a crossroads, but I think there's always a bit of a research process to actually, make that decision. And anyone who's been through that process will know that there's not necessarily a perfect solution, but it's working out, given the constraints and the needs, what is the logical next best step for the business there.
Amazing. Steve, Alastair, I'd love to get, any other additions from your side there.
So from my side, I'd say, I think at the moment my business can quite happily scale on Xero for the next 3 to 4 years. I think I will start to hit those transaction issues that Heidi mentioned around about then. I also think that having 2 tracking categories is a little bit limiting. It's okay for the moment, and I've got workarounds for it. And sort of my workaround is, I want to track my revenue in one way, but in a sort of a handful of ways, and I want to have divisions. I actually really need 3 tracking categories, but I'm using one tracking category, partially for costs, partially for revenues. So it's a cheat. I'd rather not do it. But it solves that problem, and I guess I could do to increase that to 4 tracking categories out of those 2, sort of double purpose them. But I think that might be an area where I would start to struggle. And also, I think there are issues around the number of journals, automatic journals that can be posted. So again, it's probably hitting this sort of transactional thing. Everything else that I have found, every problem that I've had in the businesses that I've been CFO for, there's generally been a solution out there in the app ecosphere, or someone clever has been able to help me get through that.
Right. And then in terms of like making the best use of Xero, what are the sort of the pro tips on, as a scaling business, how to make the most out of the functionality that Xero has to offer?
Sure, shall I pick that one up?
Please.
Okay, so I guess sort of like just on the pot, like the question just before that, and just probably from a Xero kind of lens. Yes, like transaction volume is often a reason as to why you might want to kind of start to look at an ERP system. With that being said, there is still quite a large transaction volume in place. So you're looking at like around about 1,000 to 2,000 invoices per month. And so when you start to look at an ERP system, it's really when you have a really high volume kind of business. If you're thinking about multiple repeating sales invoices each month for customers, that's when you probably would start to really have a think about an ERP system sooner rather than later. With that being said, like what can you do within the Xero core product to kind of really help it scale? So I guess like I touched on it before at the start. Some of the most like standard features, maybe it's basic, like you've got invoicing. So the invoicing templates are already kind of pretty much there set up for you. All you need to do is add a logo. Thinking back to when I was working in industry, we'd be sending out different invoices to different customers based on where they are located. So we'd be invoicing in different currencies. So one thing I would probably have done in the past would have a different invoice for different currencies, just making it super simple to get paid quickly. like it's so more than often than not, you'd have someone in the other end looking to pay for the invoice, and they just don't know. Like if you've got one invoice with all the different bank accounts on it, they just get confused. So one top tip I would have is just actually use the different invoices and put in the different currencies and different bank details you have, and for those currency kind of payments. Other areas in which I'd probably look to set up Xero is really around kind of like getting paid now quickly. So there's obviously your ability to attach payment providers to your invoices, which is a huge feature, and one way we find our customers are paid a lot quicker compared to traditional methods. If then look to kind of the more advanced kind of features of Xero and helping you scale. So we touched on tracking categories before. Thinking back to when I was in the tech business again, we would set out our kind of I suppose our expense categories based on customer success, like research and development, sales and marketing, and general and admin. And that really gives you that really nice breakdown and the ability to then report back to investors really nice and quickly. So again, that would be a huge area in which I'd kind of explore and to really help you scale. That's in the advanced settings on Xero. We've also got one of the big things in Xero is just the ability to custom report. So I guess like within Xero, you might have seen it's part of the future of Xero and V2 reporting. So we've had a bit of an overhaul recently of our kind of traditional reporting system and moved on to something called V2 reporting. This really allows us as a business to help kind of scale our own kind of in-house development, which means that due to moving on to this different reporting system, we're able to bring the new features to the market a lot quicker. So you might have seen the ability to kind of add in a lot more kind of I suppose currency of reporting within different types of reporting on the Xero core product now. Not just that, but when we look at P&Ls and look at the balance sheets within Xero, we can edit the layouts. We really customize that P&L to all requirements of the business. So that's definitely something I would also look at. I think also having like the kind of putting on like the accounting and bookkeeping channel lens. What we have within Xero HQ for accountants and bookkeepers is something called report templates. And that really allows kind of the accountants and bookkeepers out there to help kind of really manipulate some of those reporting, and they also provide back to you as a business. So again, get in touch with your accountants. They'll be able to build some really good reporting for you, whether that might be corporation tax estimates or whatnot, but just some super good ways to help you scale and see your kind of financials straight out of the box.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alastair. You know, you heard it here first. This is so rich for everyone tuning in live and watching this video. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insights there. Heidi, I'd love to come to you next. You know, in terms of the clients you've worked with, you know, there are any things which you've been able to show them that have had the sort of the wow moments in terms of the impact that's been able to have for them with using Xero?
Yeah, so I think for me, obviously, I do a lot of integrating from some of the add-ons through to Xero. But what's been super powerful is once they've got some of these add-ons working there, it could be, say, for example, a stock management system or a time and cost management system, is they're able to see their P&L work a lot more in real time. So rather than having income coming in one period and the cost of those goods are going out in a different period, and so they have this big lumpy kind of situation. Once they've got their Xero integrated with their add-on that's fit for purpose for their business, all of a sudden they can actually understand where the business is sitting on the daily, and they can just make great decisions. They can celebrate when things are going well. They can start to intervene a bit quicker when things are looking a bit wobbly, and they're not looking retrospectively. They're actually being able to assess some more lead indicators, not just lag indicators. And so obviously what Alastair's been saying about some of that custom reporting, that we can then rearrange how the P&L's grouped to again give those a bit more detailed insights. Then alongside the tracking categories, just the light bulb moments for people that's kind of almost like, cool, I now actually understand my business, which you would hope that everyone would be able to say that, but it just hasn't always been the case. And that real-time nature with those complementary add-ons into Xero and then that customization within Xero has just been like a really life-changing experience for them as a business owner. So that's just an amazing impact that it can have.
Yeah, I mean, I just echo that. In every instance where we put in Xero, we've changed changed something from being able to know what's happened to my business 6 weeks ago to be able to know what's happening in my business, sometimes 6 minutes ago. If you've got everything set up, it really is, you actually know properly what's going on in your business real time. And that's just so powerful. We're currently on another system and I don't really know what's going on in my business. We'll be on Xero fully as of next month, and I'm really looking forward to actually having a real-time pulse check on what's going on.
Amazing. I love that. From knowing what happened 6 weeks ago to six minutes ago.
Well, maybe 6 minutes is a little bit aggressive, but you get that. You get the idea.
You heard it here first. Amazing. And Steve, I would like to just come back to you. You made the tracking category point earlier around, you have the option of 2 tracking categories in Xero. It sounded like you'd had a sort of workaround where you'd been able to scale that to effectively 3 tracking categories. I wonder if you'd be happy to share that with the audience.
Well, I don't know if it works yet. That's the idea. So maybe you'll invite me back on another webinar and I'll tell you if it works.
Very good. Okay, excellent. And then the other one I had was around lock periods, and any suggestions for how to make best use of those.
I can jump in and just give you kind of my past kind of experience of lock periods. So I guess it's just always having that kind of clear kind of definition when you get to month end and how you use those. Like no one likes to have invoices posted back into past periods when you've already stated the financials. So it's just having like that kind of clear direction within your finance department and house of when and how to use those. I know there's a couple of different settings in there where you can have it only an admin can actually change it versus like a user or standard user. So it's just having like that definition within your in-house finance team and how best to use those the lock periods within Xero.
Amazing. So look, it's been such great insights. Thank you so much all for sharing those. I'd love to come to you for each of you for your top tip when it comes to scaling with Xero. So I'll go, Alastair, I'll come to you first, and then to Heidi, and then to Steve.
Okay, so I think like when I think back about when I was working in the tech business and we were moved on to the ERP system, we probably just did not do our due diligence about looking around the app marketplace and looking at actually how can we get the best use out of Xero. So my top tip would be, before you move on to anything ERP, really have a thorough look at what other solutions are out there that can connect in with Xero. We have over 1,000 different apps in the marketplace. So there's a huge amount of a wealth of opportunity out there to help scale your business without having to go to that next level in ERP and spend that amount of money and the amount of time and resource within in-house. So really have really go about and just have a look to see what you can use outside of Xero within terms of the app ecosystem to help you scale. So that would be my kind of first point of call. Then second of all is just, you might well be used to doing things within your current system, whether it be Xero or something else, one way. But if you're going to scale, just have a think about actually, is there a smarter and more efficient way of doing it still within Xero, which maybe might reduce your kind of transaction volume limit. So just have a think about, you don't have to continue doing everything the same way you've been used to, but have a think about if you're going to do it in future and help scale, is there a smarter, more efficient way of doing it?
Love that. And that's come across in this series time and again, the point around the transaction limits, but thinking laterally about those as is there a way I can revise my process or work with an ecosystem partner that means that I circumvent those limits because I am making an aggregated posting in this particular regard. Alastair, thank you so much for sharing that. Heidi, over to you for your top tip.
Yeah, so similar. My top tip would be just don't make assumption based on intel you heard a few years ago, or even assumptions that you might have built in your mind about what is or isn't possible. The capability within Xero and in the range and capability of add-ons is always growing and evolving. A classic example is I was meeting with a client the other day that we've done some strategy work together around these systems, and they've got a very complex ERP situation. That month end close off is almost never ending. And so, you know, they had just never heard of some of the options that will actually fit them and will just cut down a massive amount of excess processing. And while there's a bit of due diligence to do there, just having the opportunity with Xero and then add-ons such as Mayday and some of the reporting consolidation, their eyes were just opened to this whole new world that they'd just written off as not being possible for them. So yeah, my top tip would be just don't make assumptions based on intel you've heard a few years ago, or just on assumptions that you might have grown in your head. Actually get out there and do your research, and you may well find that the solutions are a lot more straightforward and readily available than you think.
Amazing. Steve, over to you.
I've got two, if I may. The first one is really use the ecosystem out there, both the people and the apps. Speak to as many different people as you can. The very reason why I'm on this call is because I thought, hey, Mayday can solve a problem that I've got. And I badgered David until he would talk to me. And I've done that with all of the app partners that I think will end up be part of my app stack. And they've all been incredibly helpful. And they all really want to speak to me because we're solving real world problems, and they're in the sort of startup phase where they want to solve as many problems as possible. So they either want to speak to me or they're pretending that they want to speak to me. You know, and it's been really helpful. It's certainly been helpful for me, and I hope it's been helpful for them. The second one is the chart of accounts. I think this one's come up on a number of times. Get your chart of accounts right. Really think about how your business is now and how it will be in the future. And properly think about that. If you get that right, it will make scaling and the apps that you need to add on really much easier. We've spent a lot of time on it. It's been a bit dull, but I think it's been a valuable exercise.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Stephen. As someone like who is a real, I absolutely love a granular chart of accounts, sort of planning ahead for future. I've been really thrilled with how much airtime chart of accounts has got as an important factor in scaling with Xero across this series. So, I mean, speaking of this series, this is webinar number 13 of 14. So what's coming up is we've got the finale tomorrow, automating multi-entity month end with Harriet Hope from Arbalest, Lauren Harvey from Full Stop, and Griff and I from Mayday. And then you'll be able to register for that at the address there, as well as watch recordings of all of the webinars and the fantastic content and insight that we've had across this series. Really thrilled to see so many questions come through in the Q&A. So I'm going to start off with, it's come through, multiple times in this conversation about, look out into the ecosystem. Steve, you talked about the sort of the value of finding a kind of specialist consultant to work with, and Heidi, that's what you're kind of doing on a day-to-day basis. I'd love to get your perspective about, like, how do I best go about doing that as someone who is running the finance function of a business looking to scale with Xero, when I know I'm convinced I should be looking out into the ecosystem. What are my key resources that I need to go to in helping me navigate that?
Well, I take that. So how I found out our advisors. I've been to a couple of Xero cons, I've been to Accountexes, and quite often there'll be people speaking. And so some of those people that I've been impressed with, I've got in touch with. And that you have one conversation and you'll get another couple of leads, and you just sort of snowball in terms of get out there and network. And that will help you build up a number of people that you can trust.
Nice. So it's almost sort of snowballed by the sounds of it, Steve. You started with people you heard, and then you've asked for other recommendations, and so it sounds like it's a significant time investment to do it well. Yeah,
I don't want to get this wrong. We've raised a decent chunk of money. We've got big growth expectations. I want to make sure I get this right. If I do it on my own, I might get it right. If I do it with a good partner, I'm pretty sure I will get it right.
Fascinating. Heidi, I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah, so I think in the ecosystem, any kind of good cloud integrator will be an expert in a small either niche or a small group of add-ons. You can't be an expert in everything. So I think trying to find the person who's the specialist in your particular industry or with your particular problems is like a great place to start. And then whether you're kind of partly DIYing your discovery or you're working through it with a consultant, I mean, I've just followed a very simple 3-step process, which is define, review, test. So defining your criteria, what are the must-haves, the nice-to-haves, what's currently broken and not working for you, what processes need to be remapped, what does the next 10 or 5 to 10 years look like for you, what are you hearing from the team? So defining your criteria, reviewing your options, which again you may do alongside a consultant or you may do independently, matching your defined criteria to the actual possibilities within the ecosystem, mapping your user journey, what that will look like for your team to be using and interacting with that software as well as your clients, and just understanding those integrations, trying not to make too many assumptions about how things work, and then test. So take actual user testing to ensure that it's a robust fit, where there might be criteria gaps, where again you might have made assumptions on how things work, actually getting some of your workflows live and actually going through just to make sure that it's a fit, and then you can kind of make a bit more of an informed decision. But yeah, finding someone who is a bit more of either a niche specialist or a product specialist, and then define, review, test would be my 3 steps that I'd be saying to go through. Yeah.
Amazing. And then another question here about, any useful resources that are out there for me as a kind of, higher, more sophisticated end, of the sort of the Xero user base, be that, like Alastair, I'll come to you first, be that sort of Xero's own resources. Where should I be looking in the first instance? And then equally, Heidi, Steve, anything that you found particularly useful in terms of schooling up both yourselves and Steve and your team about what is possible with Xero?
Yeah, so I guess from the Xero's perspective, for I guess the end user, like SMBs and so forth, we've got Xero Central, so a wealth of a database on there about everything that helps you use the product. So we've got that available to everyone. We've also got the community pages. So I think someone might have mentioned that on a question. There is a huge amount of kind of community based knowledge which everyone loves to share. And so if you can't find an answer to something straight away, then you've got that. We've also got our CX team, so kind of customer teams, which are always at hand to respond via email. Sometimes if you need a call back, we can actually arrange that too. So that's one other area in which, if you do come up against anything, you've got that available to you. In terms of support, like I said, but again, like my job, I work directly with accounting and bookkeeping partners. So like I said, anything from sole practitioner all the way up to enterprise style practices. And so always like look to them as also to provide some of that specialist support, because they will have some in-house kind of specialists and what we sometimes call it Xero champions, in order to help provide some of those solutions for you. So there would be some of my kind of go-to kind of advice. We've also got the Xero app marketplace, so have a look on there. There's lots of reviews from other people who've used the apps and various ecosystem offerings. And we can also within the actual app marketplace, it's split by industry, split by various specialist types of apps. So have a look there as your first point of call. And if you want to play around with a lot of these apps, they often offer trials. So that would be my kind of my advice in the first instance.
Amazing. And linking there to Heidi's test point as the final of her 3-step stage, final step of her 3-step process. Heidi, Steve, anything else that was so comprehensive, Alastair. Thank you so much in terms of the resources and help that are available to people there. And anything else from your side in terms of sort of, gems and useful resources that you've encountered?
I love the App Store. Look at my problems. That's where I found Mayday. That's where I found my revenue recognition tool that I'm going to use. And there'll be sort of 3 or 4 different tools that you think are in the sort of running for it, and then get on the phone and speak to these people or drop them an email. But yeah, it starts with the App Store. It's a great reminder, Alastair.
Amazing.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I'm always working with businesses and seeing under the hood and behind the scenes, which if you're the business owner, you might not get that organically so much, but just having conversations, people are often very happy to have generous conversations about how they're solving problems in their industry, in business, tips and tricks they've learned that maybe wouldn't be common to everyone, but maybe really relevant for people who are kind of either same size, industry, what have you. So yeah, just get around other business people and don't be afraid to ask, how do you solve this? What are you using? Because often those conversations is where the gold lies.
I'll probably just quickly add to that as well. I mean, just so some of the things we see is also trade shows. So don't be afraid to drop by some of these trade shows. I mean, like digital accountancy show that was in Battersea this year would have been like a great option available to you to come along to. So yeah, that's often like one of the great ways. So you can see a number of different apps. You can come see our Xero stand too. And obviously just have a quick chat with us, and we can kind of take you through any features that might be upcoming or that we'd recommend to you as a business.
Fantastic. Well, it's been such a great session. I'm hugely grateful to our fantastic panel for taking the time to share their insights. I know how valuable this will be for everyone who's attended and is watching this content subsequently. So a massive thanks again to our panel. Thank you to everyone who's joined and fired through such a rich array of questions. I look forward to seeing you for the series finale tomorrow. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.